We're only inviting you out of pity, so don't stay long and don't get in the way." Those were the exact words my daughter-in-law, Diana, said to me at the door of her apartment in Los Angeles. I just smiled and walked away in silence. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't beg. I simply left. And they believed they had won. They believed I was that silly, submissive old woman who would swallow the poison with a smile. But 2 weeks later, everything changed. The notifications started coming in. First, it was the bank. The financing for the condo they were counting on to move into had been canceled. Then, they discovered that the joint account where I deposited money every month was at zero, completely empty. The extra card Diana used for her shopping was blocked, and a letter from the bank was on its way. A letter that was going to destroy all their plans. But let me tell you from the beginning, because this story doesn't start with my revenge. It starts with years of silent humiliation that no one saw. My name is Elena. I am 65 years old. I have been a widow for 10 years and a mother to a single son, Robert. I raised him alone after his father, Edward, died in a car accident when the boy was barely 8 years old. From that day on, it was just the two of us against the world. I worked double shifts, sometimes triple, so that he would never lack anything. I sewed uniforms in a textile factory from 6 o'clock in the morning to 2. 00 in the afternoon, and then cleaned offices until 10 at night. I would come home with swollen hands, my eyes red from fatigue. But I always had time to help him with his homework, to hug him, to tell him that everything was going to be okay. Robert was a sweet boy. He would draw me cards with colored crayons. He promised me that when he grew up, he would buy me a huge house where I would never have to work again. He told me he would always take care of me. And I believed him with all my heart. I believed him. I watched him grow up. I watched him graduate from college with honors, get an excellent job at a technology company, become a successful independent man, and I felt so proud that sometimes my chest ached with emotion. I thought all that sacrifice had been worth it. But then Diana arrived. He met her 3 years ago at a work conference. She was an event coordinator, always impeccable. Always with that perfect smile that looked like it was practiced in the mirror. From the first moment I saw her, I knew something wasn't right. It wasn't the intuition of a jealous mother-in-law. It was something deeper. It was the way she looked at me, as if I were a bother, as if I were an old piece of furniture that had to be gotten rid of sooner or later. At first, they were small comments disguised as jokes. "Oh, Elena, you are so old-fashioned. Oh, don't worry, you rest, we'll take care of it." As if I were a useless old woman, Robert wouldn't say anything. He would just smile awkwardly and change the subject. He never defended me, not a single time. Then the exclusions began. The first Christmas after they got married, they had a family dinner. I found out through photos on social media. There they all were, Diana's parents, her siblings, her cousins, everyone toasting around a table decorated with ivory candles and crystal glasses. There were 12 places at that table. I was not invited. When I asked Robert the next day, he said, "It was a small thing, Mom, last minute." A lie. That table had room for 12 people, and they had planned everything weeks in advance. My 64th birthday arrived, and I didn't receive a call, not a message, nothing. I spent the whole day waiting by the phone like an idiot. At the time of 11 o'clock at night, I received a text message. "Sorry, Mom. It slipped our minds. Happy birthday." It slipped their minds. The birthday of the woman who sacrificed her whole life for him simply slipped their minds. Little by little, I disappeared from their lives. They no longer asked for my opinion on anything. When I visited them, Diana always had an excuse. A headache, an urgent call, an important meeting. And I kept insisting like an idiot. I kept calling. I kept cooking their favorite American dishes like turkey and mashed potatoes. I kept asking if they needed anything, but Diana always rejected everything. "We're on a diet. We already bought food. Better save it for yourself." Until that night came. Robert's 32nd birthday. I arrived promptly at the time of 7 o'clock in the evening with a chocolate cake I had made with my own hands, the one my son had loved since he was a kid. I rang the doorbell and waited. I heard laughter inside. Music, the sound of glasses clinking. The door opened and there was Diana in an emerald green dress, perfect makeup, hair tied up in an elegant bun. She looked me up and down with that look of annoyance she no longer bothered to hide. "Elenina," she said with a fake smile. "Robert invited me," I replied, confused. "He called me this morning." She sighed as if my presence were a huge inconvenience. She stepped aside just enough for me to see inside the apartment. There were at least 15 people inside. Their friends, co-workers, Diana's whole family, silver balloons hanging from the ceiling, a table full of expensive food and bottles of wine. A big party, a meticulously planned celebration. And then Diana said those words I will never forget. "We're only inviting you out of pity, Elelenina, so don't stay long and try not to get in the way. Everyone here is important people, and we don't want any discomfort." The world stopped for a second. I felt something inside me break into 1,000 pieces. It wasn't my heart. It had already been broken many times. It was something else. It was the last hope that I still mattered to someone, that I still had a place in my son's life. I looked over her shoulder, searching for Robert. He was there, standing by the table, a glass of wine in his hand. Our eyes met for a second. I expected him to say something, to defend me, to tell his wife that she was completely out of line, but Robert simply looked away and continued talking with his friends as if nothing was happening. That's when I understood everything. He knew. He agreed. I really was just a nuisance to them. I didn't say anything. I wasn't going to give them the spectacle of seeing me cry. I simply smiled, a quiet, almost kind smile. I watched Diana frown, confused by my reaction. I think she expected shouts or tears, but I was already beyond that. I held out the cake I had brought. "Happy birthday to Robert," I said in a calm voice. She took it dismissively as if it were trash. I turned around and walked toward the elevator with my back straight and my head held high. I heard the door close behind me with a dry thud. The laughter and music continued as if nothing had happened, as if I had never been there. Inside the elevator, I saw my reflection in the metallic mirror of the doors. A 65-year-old woman with gray hair pulled back in a simple bun, wearing a cream-colored sweater that I had chosen so carefully that morning. I looked tired. I looked old, but I also looked awake, as if something inside me had just opened after years of being asleep. I drove home in complete silence. The streets were lit with those orange city lights that always seemed sad to me. I didn't turn on the music, I didn't cry, I just drove automatically while my mind processed what had just happened. "We're only inviting you out of pity." Those words spun in my head again and again like a scratched record. I arrived at my condo near the time of 10 o'clock at night. I lived alone in a small but tidy apartment in downtown Chicago. 2 bedrooms, a modest living room, a kitchen where I hardly ever cooked, because why cook if you're alone? The walls were light beige, everything was functional, everything was silent, everything was empty. I took off my shoes and sat on the sofa without even turning on many lights. Only the lamp in the corner projected soft shadows against the wall. I closed my eyes and let the memories come because I needed to understand how I had gotten here, how I had allowed them to treat me this way. I thought of my mother, Martha. She died 15 years ago, but I could still hear her at moments like this. She was a tough woman, one of those who survived hard times without bending. She worked cleaning houses all her life so that I could go to school. She never complained. She never asked anyone for anything. And when she died, she left me the only thing she had, a small house on the outskirts of the city with a garden full of mint plants and a wooden porch where we used to drink coffee in the afternoons. Elelenina. She always told me, a woman who respects herself never begs for love, not even from her own blood. I never quite understood that phrase until now. Until tonight, because that was exactly what I had been doing for the last 3 years, begging for the crumbs of attention from my own son. That house my mother left me was now rented to a young couple who paid $600 a month. I lived here in this more central apartment closer to Robert, closer to the illusion that I was still part of his life. How stupid I had been. I got up from the sofa and walked to my bedroom. I opened the closet and pulled a cardboard box from the top shelf. A box I had been storing there for months without daring to really look through it. Inside were documents, many documents, contracts, notarized papers, things I had signed in the last 2 years because Robert had asked me to. It's just a formality, Mom. It's to speed up a process. Trust me. And I trusted as I always trusted because that's what mothers do. Right? We trust our children blindly, even if they are sticking a knife in our backs. I spread all the papers on the bed and started reading carefully, one by one, line by line. And with every page I turned, I felt the sadness transform into something different, into rage, into clarity, into cold determination. The first document was a mortgage loan contract, a new condo in an exclusive area of the city. Value, $250,000, date of signature 8 months ago. And there on the co-signer and guarantor line was my name, my signature, my identification number. I was legally responsible for that debt. If they didn't pay, the bank would come after me. They never told me that. Robert had only told me that he needed my signature for some paperwork for work. I signed without reading because I trusted him. The second document was even worse. A notarized authorization, where I allowed Robert to access my full credit history and use my name as collateral for future financial transactions. I had basically given him legal power to incur debt using my credit, and I didn't even know it. The third paper was a joint account contract, a bank account that I had opened 2 years ago because Robert told me it would be easier to help each other in case of emergencies. I deposited $500 every month into that account. Money that came from my pension and the rent from my mother's house. I thought it was an emergency fund for both of us, but according to the bank statements that were attached, they had been withdrawing that money monthly. Everything down to the last cent. They used it for their personal expenses, for their outings, for their whims. I sat on the edge of the bed with the papers trembling in my hands, not from fear, from rage. They had used me. They had manipulated me. They had turned me into their personal cash cow while treating me like trash. And the worst part was that they had done it with my own consent because I had signed. I had trusted. I had been so naive that I hadn't even read what I was authorizing. I looked at the clock. It was past midnight. Outside, everything was silent. I got up and walked to the kitchen. I made strong coffee, even though I knew I wouldn't sleep anyway. I poured myself a cup and sat at the small dining table with all the documents in front of me. And then I started thinking coldly, methodically, as I had never thought before in my life. If I was a guarantor for that condo, that meant I had legal rights over the contract. If I was a joint account holder of that bank account, I could move that money however I wanted. If they had used my name without explaining the real consequences to me, there was a breach of trust, possibly fraud. I picked up my phone and started looking for information. Guarantor laws, co-signer rights, how to cancel bank authorizations, how to remove your name from mortgage contracts. I was reading until the time of 4 o'clock in the morning, taking notes, underlining important things, putting a plan together in my head. When the sun began to rise through the kitchen window, I already knew exactly what I was going to do. And it wasn't going to be fast. It wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be silent, legal, and completely irreversible. I showered. I put on comfortable clothes. I gathered all the documents and put them in a gray plastic folder. At the time of 8 o'clock in the morning on the dot, I called a law firm I had found online, specialists in banking and family law. "Good morning," I said when they answered. "I need an urgent consultation. I believe financial fraud has been committed using my name, and I need to know what my legal options are." They gave me an appointment for that same afternoon at the time of 3 o'clock. Perfect. I spent the rest of the morning organizing everything. I printed bank statements from the last 2 years. I made copies of all the contracts. I made a detailed list of every deposit I had made into that joint account, every signature I had placed without really understanding what I was authorizing. Everything. At the time of 2:30, I left my house with the folder under my arm. The law firm was downtown in a tall office building with huge windows. I took the elevator up to the 12th floor. The receptionist led me to a conference room where a lawyer about 40 years old named Charles was waiting for me. Dark gray suit, rectangular glasses, serious but kind expression. "Mrs. Elena," he greeted me, shaking my hand. "Tell me what's going on." And I told him everything from the beginning since Diana came into my son's life. From the humiliations, from the documents I signed without reading, from the bank account they emptied every month, from the condo for which I was a guarantor without really knowing it, from that night at the door where they told me they were only inviting me out of pity. Charles listened in silence, taking notes in a notepad. When I finished speaking, he reviewed each document carefully, one by one, reading the fine print, checking dates, underlining clauses. After almost an hour, he looked up and stared directly into my eyes. "Mrs. Elena," he said in a firm voice, "you have several options here, and all of them are completely legal." Charles leaned back in his chair and interlaced his fingers on the table. He looked at me with a mixture of professionalism and something that seemed like genuine empathy. He had seen cases like mine before. That was obvious. But every story of abuse has its own unique bitter flavor. "First, let's talk about the condo," he began, pointing to the mortgage contract. "You appear here as a guarantor and co-signer with joint and several liability. That means if your son and daughter-in-law stop paying, the bank can come directly to you to collect the entirety of the debt, $250,000 plus interest." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. And what can I do? "Legally, you can request removal as a guarantor if you prove that you signed under incomplete or misleading information. We have evidence here that the implications of the contract were never clearly explained to you. That is a breach of trust. We can initiate a legal process to remove you from the contract. The problem is that takes time, months maybe." "And the quick option?" I asked because something inside me told me I didn't have months. I needed to act now. Charles smiled slightly. "The quick option is more drastic. As a co-signer, you have the right to demand the immediate liquidation of the debt or the sale of the property if you believe your assets are at risk. Basically, you can force the cancellation of the loan. If they can't pay the entire loan immediately, the bank executes the guarantee and the condo goes back to the financial institution. They lose the property and you are free of responsibility. Is that legal?" "Completely. It is stipulated in the contract. Clause 17, Section B. Co-signers can demand early liquidation if they believe there is a risk of default. And believe me, with the background you are showing me here, any judge will understand that you have sufficient reasons to protect your assets." I nodded slowly. "What else?" "The joint bank account," he continued, moving on to another document. "Here the situation is simpler. You are a joint account holder. That means you have full rights over the money deposited. You can withdraw everything, close the account, or simply stop depositing. They cannot legally do anything to prevent it. And the extra card I gave my daughter-in-law, that card is in your name. You are the primary card holder. You can cancel it whenever you want with a simple call to the bank. You don't need anyone's authorization." I felt something warm begin to grow in my chest. It wasn't hatred, it was power. Control. The feeling that for the first time in years I held the cards. "There is a third thing," Charles said, pulling out another paper. "This authorization you signed giving him access to your credit history and allowing him to use your name as collateral. This is more delicate because technically you gave consent. But again, there is evidence that the real implications were not explained to you. We can revoke this authorization immediately with a notarized document. Once revoked, any future use of your name would be illegal. How long will all this take? If you want to move quickly, we can have everything ready in 1 week. Notarized documents, requests to the bank, legal notifications, everything. But I need to know something, Mrs. Elena." He leaned forward and stared at me intently. "Are you sure you want to do this? Because once we start this process, there is no turning back. Your relationship with your son is going to change forever. Maybe it will be completely destroyed. I remained silent for a moment. I thought of little Robert drawing me cards with crayons. I thought of all those nights I stayed up working to give him a better life. I thought of his promises that he would always take care of me. And then I thought of him that night at his party, looking away while his wife humiliated me at the door. "My relationship with my son is already destroyed," I said in a firm voice. I was just the only one who didn't want to see it, so yes, I am completely sure. Charles nodded. "Very well. Then let's begin." We spent the next 2 hours reviewing every detail. I signed authorizations, I filled out forms, I gave specific instructions on how I wanted to proceed. Charles explained to me that the entire process would be silent. They wouldn't know anything until the official notifications started coming in, and by then it would be too late to stop it. I left that building near the time of 6 o'clock in the evening. The sun was beginning to set, staining the sky orange and violet. I walked to my car with the empty folder under my arm. All the documents had stayed with Charles. Now they were legal evidence. Now they were my ammunition. I drove back home feeling something strange. It wasn't exactly happiness. It was something deeper. It was the feeling of having regained my dignity, of having stopped being a victim. For the next 4 days, nothing happened. Robert didn't call. He didn't write. Absolute silence. I didn't try to contact him either. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't running after him, begging for attention. And it felt liberating. On the 5th day, I received a call from Charles. "Mrs. Elalanina, we have all the documents ready," he said. "Tomorrow, first thing, we are going to file the request for liquidation of the mortgage loan with the bank. We are also formally notifying the revocation of all the authorizations you signed. Are you ready?" "Completely ready," I replied without hesitation. "Good. One more thing. I suggest that this afternoon you go to the bank and withdraw all the money from the joint account. Leave it at 0 and cancel that extra card. Do it before they realize what is happening." I hung up the phone and stared at the wall for a moment. This was the point of no return. Once I did this, the war was officially declared. But there was no longer fear in me, only determination. I changed my clothes. I put on brown pants and a cream-colored blouse. I tied up my hair. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back at me was no longer the same one who had left that apartment humiliated a week ago. This woman had cold eyes and a clenched jaw. This woman had woken up. I arrived at the bank at the time of 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was a large branch with shiny marble floors and freezing air conditioning. I approached the executive service window. "Good afternoon," I greeted in a calm voice. "I need to make a withdrawal from a joint account and cancel an extra card." The executive asked for my ID and checked my account in the system. "Mrs. Alelinina, I see you have a joint account with a balance of $1,200. How much do you wish to withdraw?" "All of it," I said without hesitation. "I want to close the account completely, and I also need to immediately block the extra card number 5578. She looked at me surprised but professional. "Are you sure? This operation is irreversible." "Completely sure." She had me sign several documents, closing authorizations, product cancellation, permanent card blocking, everything. 15 minutes later, I left the bank with a check for $1,200 in my purse and the satisfaction of knowing that Diana was going to try to pay for something with that card, and it was going to be rejected. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in weeks, without nightmares, without anxiety, just the peaceful sleep of someone who had finally taken control of her own life. The next morning, while having coffee in my kitchen, my phone rang. It was Charles. "It's done," he said simply. "The bank received the liquidation request. They are going to notify your son within the next 48 hours. He has 30 days to pay the entirety of the loan or the property will be foreclosed. We also sent the revocations of authorization. Everything is in motion." I hung up and stared at my coffee cup. My hands were trembling slightly, not from fear, from adrenaline, from anticipation. Now all that remained was to wait for the bomb to drop. 2 days of absolute silence passed. 2 days in which I continued with my normal life as if nothing was happening. I got up early, made my coffee, read the newspaper, went for a walk in the park near my house. Everything with a strange calm that I myself did not recognize. It was as if a part of me was floating above everything, observing from afar, waiting for the moment when the storm would finally explode. And it exploded on Wednesday afternoon. I was in the kitchen preparing a salad for dinner when my phone started ringing. It was Robert. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times, call after call. Then the messages started. Dozens of messages. I could see the notifications accumulating on the screen, but I wouldn't know. Not yet. I wanted them to feel the desperation. I wanted them to sweat. After the 10th call, I finally answered. "Hello, Robert," I said in a quiet, almost bored voice. "Mom, what the hell did you do?" His voice sounded sharp, desperate, almost hysterical. I had never heard him like that, not even when he was a kid and fell off his bicycle. "Excuse me, I don't understand what you mean, don't play dumb. The bank just notified us that we have to pay off the entire condo in 30 days. $250,000. Mom, do you have any idea what you were doing?" I sat down on a kitchen chair and crossed my legs. I looked at my nails with feigned indifference. Oh, that yes. I exercised my right as a co-signer to protect my assets, something completely legal according to the contract that you made me sign. Or did you forget to mention that you were making me responsible for $250,000 worth of debt? That was normal paperwork. All banks ask for guarantors. Don't be ridiculous. Ridiculous! I felt the rage beginning to boil beneath my apparent calm. Is that the word you chose? How interesting. Because I would say I was ridiculous when I signed papers without reading because I trusted my son blindly. I was ridiculous when I kept depositing $500 every month into an account that you emptied for your whims. I was ridiculous when I showed up with homemade American food and you rejected it as if it were garbage. Mom, this has nothing to do with it. I interrupted him with a sharp voice. It has everything to do with it, Robert. Or did you already forget what your charming wife told me on your birthday? We're only inviting you out of pity. Don't get in the way. Do those words sound familiar to you? Because they stuck with me pretty well. There was a silence on the other end of the line. I could hear his ragged breathing. I could picture him standing in his living room, his face red, clutching the phone tightly, searching for something to say. Diana didn't mean it that way. He tried to defend her in a lower voice. She was stressed. She had a lot on her mind. She didn't mean it. Oh no, and why didn't you say anything? You were standing right there looking me in the eyes while your wife humiliated me at your own door. And you didn't lift a finger to defend me? Not one word, Robert. Not a single word. I didn't want to make a scene. Sure, you didn't want to make a scene, but you had no problem using my name to put me in debt without explaining the consequences. You had no problem emptying the account where I deposited money every month, thinking it was for emergencies. You had no problem excluding me from your life little by little until I became a nuisance. Do you know what the saddest thing about all this is, son? That I would have given everything for you, and you paid me back with betrayal. It's not betrayal. You are my mother. You are supposed to help me. And there it was, the naked, raw truth. To him, I wasn't a person with feelings and dignity. I was a resource, a source of money and favors that he could exploit at will. And when I no longer served him emotionally, he simply discarded me, but kept my financial usefulness active. You're right, I said in a dangerously calm voice. I am your mother. And as your mother, I spent 30 years sacrificing myself for you. I worked double shifts so you would never lack anything. I broke my back to pay for your college. I cried happy tears when you graduated. I gave you everything I had and more. But do you know what I learned too late, Robert? That being a mother doesn't mean being your slave. It doesn't mean letting you walk all over me. And it definitely doesn't mean continuing to finance your life while you treat me like trash. Mom, please. We can't lose the condo. We have plans. We were going to move next month. We already paid deposits. We bought new furniture. New furniture? I repeated bitterly. With the money you took from our joint account, I suppose. Which, by the way, I already closed. Oh, and before you ask, I also canceled the extra card that Diana used so generously. She won't be able to buy any more purses or shoes with my credit. What? Now he was shouting. You closed the account, Mom. There are automatic payments linked to that account. Utilities, subscriptions, too bad. I guess you'll have to use your own money now. What a novel concept, right? I can't believe you're doing this after everything we've done for you. Those words were like a slap in the face. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. Everything you've done for me? Enlighten me, Robert. Tell me exactly what you've done for me. Invite me to your wedding where you sat me at the last table with people I didn't even know. Forget my birthday. Exclude me from family dinners. Treat me like a maid when you needed me to watch your dog. Make me feel like my presence was a bother. Please tell me. Hell, I'm eager to know. Silence. A long, uncomfortable silence where I could hear voices in the background. Diana was there. I could hear her talking fast, nervous. What is she saying? Did she fix everything? Tell her she has to fix this now. Mom! Robert's voice now sounded more controlled, more calculating, that tone he used when he tried to manipulate me. I know things haven't been perfect, I admit it, but we're family. Family forgives. Family supports each other. We can't let a misunderstanding destroy everything we have. A misunderstanding. I repeated the word slowly. That's what you call it now. How convenient. Do you know what the saddest thing is, Robert? That if you had come a week ago, if you had called after that night and said, Mom, I'm sorry, Diana was out of line and I should have defended you, maybe things would be different. If you had shown even a shred of genuine remorse, maybe I would have reconsidered everything. But you didn't. A whole week passed and not a call, not a message. Nothing until the bank notified you and suddenly you remembered that you have a mother. I was going to call you. Don't lie. You were never good at lying. You are calling me because you need me, not because you care about me. And that is the difference between real love and self-interest. Fine. You want me to apologize. I'm sorry. Happy. Now fix this. And there it was again. The true face. He couldn't even pretend sincere remorse. He just wanted me to solve his problem as always. No. I simply said, What? I said, No, I'm not going to fix anything. You got into this mess. You fix it. You have 30 days to come up with $250,000. That gives you enough time to sell some of those expensive things you bought with my money. Or maybe Diana's parents can help you. After all, they are always invited to everything. It's not like that. Diana's parents don't have that money. Nobody we know has that kind of money. Then I guess you'll have to learn to live with the consequences of your decisions, like I had to learn. Mom, please. Now his voice was breaking. He was crying, Please don't do this. We are all we have. You and me, we're family. I felt something inside me painfully tighten because that was the voice of the child I knew, the boy who cried after nightmares, and I would hug him until he calmed down. The boy who told me I was the best mom in the world. But that child no longer existed. That child had become a man who used me and despised me in equal measure. No, Robert, I said in a firm voice, despite the lump in my throat. You decided we weren't family anymore when you allowed me to be treated like trash. When you signed documents behind my back, when you stole my peace of mind. I'm just a bothersome old woman who is invited out of pity. Remember? Those were your exact words. So now this bothersome old woman is going to do what she should have done a long time ago. Take care of herself. I hung up the phone before he could answer. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding, but I didn't cry. There were no tears left for them. I left the phone on the kitchen table and stared at it as if it were a bomb about to explode. I knew it would ring again, and I was right. 30 seconds later, the screen lit up again. Robert. I declined the call. He called again. I declined again and again and again. After the 6th call, I simply turned off the phone. The silence that followed was strange, heavy, but also liberating. I got up and walked to the living room window. Outside, It was getting dark. The city lights began to turn on one by one like concrete fireflies. People were returning to their homes after work. Life was taking its normal course for everyone but me. Because I had just crossed a line I never thought I would cross. I went to my bedroom and opened the nightstand drawer. There I kept a small wooden box inlaid with mother of pearl that had belonged to my mother Martha. Inside were old letters, yellowed photographs, and a worn notebook where she wrote down her thoughts. I opened it carefully as if it were a sacred object. I turned the pages slowly. My mother's handwriting was firm and elegant, even though she had only studied up to the 6th grade. I read some random entries. Today, Alelina turned 15. I made her a cake with the little I had. She looked at me with those eyes full of gratitude that break my heart. I wish I could give her more. I wish I could give her the world. Another entry from years later. Elena married Edward today. He is a good man. I can see it in his eyes. He will take care of her. He will respect her. That is the only thing a mother can ask for. That her daughter finds someone who values her. And one more written only months before her death. I am tired. My body no longer responds as it used to. But I am not afraid to die. I did what I had to do. I gave Alelina the tools to be strong. Now I just hope she uses them when she needs them. I closed the notebook carefully and held it against my chest. I'm using them, Mom, I whispered into the empty air. I'm sorry it took so long. I didn't sleep well that night, not out of regret, but out of adrenaline. My mind wouldn't stop reviewing the conversation with Robert. Every word, every tone, every pathetic justification. And the more I thought about it, the clearer I saw the truth. I had allowed all of this. I had been an accomplice to my own humiliation out of fear of being alone, out of fear of losing the only son I had. But what was the point of clinging to someone who had already let go of you a long time ago? The next morning, I turned on the phone. I had 53 messages, 28 missed calls, most from Robert, but there were also some from unknown numbers that were probably Diana using other people's phones. I didn't open any messages. I didn't listen to any voicemails. I simply blocked both numbers and left the phone on the table. At the time of 10 o'clock in the morning, my apartment doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and there was Robert. He looked terrible. Deep dark circles under his eyes, disheveled hair, shirt wrinkled as if he had slept in it. He was alone without Diana. How curious that she wouldn't come to face me. I didn't open the door. Mom, I know you're there, he said in a hoarse voice. Your car is in the parking lot. Please open up. We need to talk. I stayed silent on the other side, my back against the wall, listening. Mom, please, I can't lose the condo. You can't do this to me. I'm your son, your only son. His voice broke. I'm begging you, open the door. Part of me wanted to open it. That maternal part that never completely dies, no matter how much you are hurt. That part that remembers changing diapers at the time of 3. 00 in the morning and bandaging scraped knees and celebrating every small achievement as if it were a miracle. But another part of me, the part that had finally woken up, knew that if I opened that door, everything would have been in vain. Mom, Diana says she's going to talk to you, that she's going to apologize, that it was all a misunderstanding. Just give me a chance to fix this. Diana says they weren't even his own words. He couldn't even articulate a genuine apology without his wife dictating what to say. I heard him slump against the door. I could imagine him sitting on the hallway floor with his head in his hands. He stayed there for almost an hour talking, begging, crying, and I listened to every word without moving, without opening, without giving in. Finally, he left. I heard his footsteps walking away down the corridor, the sound of the elevator, the silence that returned. I sat down on the sofa and let out a long sigh. My hands were trembling slightly, not from fear but from the accumulated tension. I had managed to resist. I had managed to stand firm, and that was harder than I ever imagined. The following days were a strange mixture of calm and storm. Robert tried everything. He came 3 more times to knock on my door. He waited for me in the parking lot one morning, but I simply turned around and walked for 2 hours until he got tired of waiting. He sent me flowers with a card that read, "Forgive me, Mom. I love you." I let them wither at the entrance of the building without touching them. Diana also tried to contact me. She sent me a voice message on a messaging app before I blocked her number. Her voice sounded forcibly sweet. Artificial. Ella Nena, this is Diana. Look, I think things were misunderstood the other day. I didn't mean to sound rude. I was very stressed with the party organization and said things without thinking. You are part of this family and we appreciate you very much. We can resolve this like adults, right? Call me when you can. I deleted the audio before finishing listening to it. She also wrote me a long message. Ella Nena, I understand you're upset, but this is getting out of control. It's not fair that you punish Robert for something I said. He loves you. I also appreciate you, even if you don't believe it. We can start over. We can be a real family. But you need to take the first step and cancel that craziness with the bank. It's destroying our lives. Please think about Robert. The manipulation was so obvious that it was laughable. First, she tried to victimize herself, then appeal to my maternal feelings, and finally blame me for the destruction they themselves had caused. It was a classic narcissistic manipulator's handbook. I did not respond. On Friday of that week, 2 weeks after that night at their door, I received a call from Charles. Mrs. Elelanina, I have news, he said professionally. The bank confirmed the execution of the process. Your son has 18 days remaining to liquidate the loan or the property will be foreclosed. Your son's lawyers also contacted me trying to negotiate. They want to know if you would be willing to withdraw the request in exchange for them paying you a certain monthly amount. How much are they offering? $200 monthly? I laughed. A bitter, dry laugh. $200. Less than half of what I voluntarily deposited into that account that they emptied every month. That's their idea of a fair negotiation. Obviously, it's a ridiculous offer, but legally I have to inform you. Tell them no. Tell them there is no negotiation possible. Either they pay everything in the next 18 days or they lose the condo. There is no middle ground. Understood. There's something else. Your son filed a lawsuit alleging that you are acting with malice and that your decision has no legal basis. It's a desperate attempt, but I had to inform you. I felt the rage rise in my throat. He is suing me. Yes, but don't worry. His case is weak. We have all the documentation proving that you signed under incomplete information and that you have every right to protect your assets. It won't succeed, but it does mean that this could drag on a little longer in court. Let him do it. I said in a cold voice. Let him spend money on lawyers that he doesn't have. Let him sink deeper. I don't care anymore. I hung up and stared at the phone. My own son was suing me, the child I raised, the child I gave my life for. He was taking me to court because I finally said no. That night, I took out a bottle of wine that I had been keeping in the kitchen for months. I poured myself a large glass and sat on the balcony of my condo. The air was cool. The city shone below like an ocean of lights, and I felt strangely at peace because, for the first time in years, I wasn't begging. I wasn't waiting. I wasn't being invisible. I was being seen. Even if it was as the villain of their story, even if they hated me, even if they sued me, at least now they knew I existed. I took a sip of wine and raised the glass to the night sky. To you, Mom, I whispered, for teaching me that a woman who respects herself never begs for love, not even from her own blood. The following days were strangely calm, like the silence that comes after a storm when everything is destroyed. But at least there are no more thunderclaps. I established a new routine. I got up early, made coffee, read a book on the balcony as the sun rose. Simple things I had forgotten to do because I was always worried about Robert, always thinking about how to get closer to him, how to let him know that I was still there. Not anymore. One afternoon, almost 10 days after Robert's last visit to my door, I decided to do something I had been putting off for years. I drove to the outskirts of the city, to the neighborhood where I grew up, to the house my mother Martha had left me as an inheritance. It was a small one-story house with faded yellow walls and a terracotta cold tile roof. The front garden was full of mint plants that grew wild and free. The wooden porch where we used to sit and drink coffee needed a coat of paint, but was still sturdy. The young couple who rented it kept everything decent. They paid the $600 promptly every month. They never caused any problems. I parked in front of the house and stayed there, sitting in the car for a long time, just looking, remembering. This house was where my mother had lived her last years. It was where I had grown up, where I had learned what it meant to work hard, where I had seen my mother return every night with hands cracked from cleaning other people's houses, but always with her head held high. I took out my phone and dialed the number of the woman who rented the house. She answered on the third ring. "Mrs. Elelenina, what a surprise. Is everything okay?" "Hello, Carol. Yes, everything is fine. Look, I'm calling because I need to ask you something. How quickly could you look for another place if I needed the house back?" There was a pause. "Are you going to sell us the house? Because if so, my husband and I would be very interested. We've talked about it several times. That option had not even crossed my mind. I hadn't thought about selling. Well, let me ask you, how much could you offer? We have saved about $40,000. I know it's not much, but we could get a loan for the rest. The house is valued at about $80,000 according to what we saw online. $80,000. It wasn't a fortune, but it wasn't a small amount either. And suddenly, an idea began to form in my head. A crazy idea. A liberating idea. Let me think about it. I told her, "I'll call you in a few days." I hung up and kept looking at the house through the car window. What was I doing living in that small, sad downtown apartment when I could be here? In the place where my mother raised me. In the place that had history, that had a soul, that had peace. I returned to my apartment with that idea swirling in my head. $80,000 for the house, plus the savings I had in the bank, plus my monthly pension. I could move to a more affordable place. I could live peacefully without so much financial pressure. I could finally breathe. That night, I called Charles. "Mrs. Elelenina, how are you? I was just about to call you. 20 days have passed since the notification. Your son has 10 days left to liquidate the loan. And what are his lawyers saying? They are trying to negotiate extensions with the bank, but I think it will be difficult. The policies are clear. Either there is full payment or there is foreclosure. Have you had any more contact with your son?" Attempts on his part. I haven't responded to anything, but I have a different question. If I wanted to sell a property I own, how long would the whole process take? It depends. If you find a buyer quickly and everything is in order, maybe 2 or 3 months. Are you thinking of selling? Maybe. Or maybe moving in there. I still don't know. I'm just evaluating options. Well, if you need legal advice for anything, you know where to find me. I spent that whole night making calculations, numbers on napkins, budgets in my old notebook. If I sold the house, I had enough money to buy something smaller in another city. I could start over, far from here, far from the memories, far from Robert and Diana, or I could move into my mother's house and rent out this apartment. The options were so many, and for the first time in years, I was the one deciding. On day 25 after the bank notification, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me respond. "Mrs. Elelenina." It was an older woman's voice, formal, educated. "Yes. Who is speaking?" "This is Gladys, Diana's mother." "Excuse me for bothering you. I got your number from a mutual friend. I need to speak with you urgently. It's about my daughter and your son." I felt my jaw tense up. Diana's mother, the woman who had always been at all the family dinners while I was excluded, the one who appeared in all the photos with her non-existent grandson while I disappeared from the narrative. "I have nothing to discuss with you," I said coldly. "Please, just listen to me for 5 minutes. Afterward, if you want to hang up on me, you have every right, but let me explain something that perhaps you don't know." Something in her tone made me hesitate. She didn't sound arrogant or manipulative. She sounded tired, defeated even. 5 minutes, I said. Thank you. Look, I know you think we are a perfect family, that we have always been on Diana's side in everything, and you are partly right. I raised my daughter to be strong, independent, successful, but I also raised her with the wrong values. I taught her that money is everything, that marrying well is more important than marrying for love, that image is worth more than feelings. I remained silent, letting her talk. When Diana met Robert, I was happy, not because he was a good man, which he is, but because he had a good job, because he came from less, and that meant he was going to value the lifestyle we could offer him. I pushed that marriage. I planted the idea in my daughter's head that you were a nuisance, that mothers-in-law are always a problem, that it was better to keep you away. I felt the rage begin to simmer in my chest. And why are you telling me all this now? What do you want? Me to withdraw the demand from the bank? Me to forgive your daughter and go back to how things were before? No, she said, her voice cracking. I don't expect anything from you. I just want you to know that I was wrong, that I destroyed something I shouldn't have destroyed. Because now that everything is falling apart, now that Robert and Diana are desperate, now that they have come to beg me to lend them money that I don't have, I finally see the monster I helped create. You don't have the money? I asked with genuine curiosity. No. My husband and I are retired. We live on a pension. The house where we live still has a mortgage. We don't have $250,000. No one in our family has that amount. And believe me, Diana has called every relative we have, begging for help. Something inside me felt strangely satisfied with that information. It wasn't exactly joy. It was justice. They thought they could use my name, my credit, my money, and that I would simply accept it because we were family. They never calculated that I could say enough. Mrs. Alelanena, Gladys continued, I don't know you. I don't know what kind of woman you are, but from the little I've seen in these days of desperation, I can say that you raised a son who had everything he needed. Education, opportunities, and he chose to waste that. He chose to bite the hand that fed him. That is not your fault. It's his fault, and it's also my fault for influencing my daughter to treat you that way. Why are you telling me all this? I asked, my voice tired. Because someone has to apologize to you, and that someone is me. Diana still doesn't understand what she did. Robert still thinks he's the victim, but I do understand, and I know that no apology will repair the damage, but I still needed to tell you. There was a long silence. I could hear her ragged breathing on the other end. Maybe she was crying. Your apology changes nothing. I finally said, the bank is going to foreclose on the condo in 5 days if there is no full payment. That is out of my hands now. I know, and I'm not asking you to change your decision. I just wanted you to know the truth. That not everyone in this story is bad. That some were just foolish, and that sometimes we realize it too late. She hung up before I could reply. I stayed there, sitting with the phone in my hand, staring at the screen that went dark again. Diana's mother had just apologized not to manipulate me, not to change my decision just because she needed to do it. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something akin to understanding. Not forgiveness, but understanding. The damage was done. There was no going back. But at least now I knew someone understood why I had done it. The last 5 days before the deadline were the strangest of this whole nightmare. There was a tense calm in the air, like when you know a storm is approaching. But you still don't know how destructive it will be. I continued with my routine. Coffee in the mornings, walks in the park, reading on the balcony, but always with the phone nearby, waiting. Charles called me on day 28. Mrs. Alelanena, your son's lawyers made one last offer. They propose that you accept a payment plan. They would pay $5,000 monthly for the next 50 months until the entire debt is liquidated. In exchange, you would withdraw the request for immediate foreclosure. I did the math mentally. $5,000 for 50 months, $250,000. Mathematically, it checked out. But there was a huge problem with that proposal. Charles, where are they going to get $5,000 monthly if they don't even have the full $250,000 now? Robert earns well, but not that well. And as far as I know, Diana quit her job 6 months ago. Exactly my point. It's a promise they can't keep. In 3 or 4 months, they will stop paying and you will be in the same situation. But worse, because you will have lost time and they will have continued living in that condo without consequences. Then the answer is no. I thought so. I will let them know. Mrs. Elena, get ready. In 2 days, the bank is going to execute the foreclosure. Your son is going to lose the condo and he will probably try to contact you in more desperate ways. Are you ready for that? As ready as I can be, I replied. Although I wasn't sure if it was true, that night I couldn't sleep well. Not out of guilt, but out of anticipation. I knew what was coming was going to be brutal. Robert was not the kind of person who accepts defeat quietly, and I was right. On day 29, at the time of 7 o'clock in the morning, someone started ringing my apartment doorbell insistently over and over without stopping. I got out of bed, my heart pounding, and looked through the peephole. It was Robert. But he wasn't alone. Diana was with him. Both of them looked terrible. He had several days of stubble, deep dark circles under his eyes, wrinkled clothes. She had unwashed hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. No makeup, wearing gray sweatpants as if she had just gotten out of bed. "Mom, open the door!" Robert shouted, hitting it with his fist. "I know you're in there. Open up." I didn't open it. I stayed on the other side with my back against the wall, breathing deeply, trying to stay calm. "Elena, please." Now it was Diana speaking. Her voice sounded hoarse, desperate. "We need to talk tomorrow. We lose everything." "Everything? Do you understand?" "We are going to be out on the street. We won't have anywhere to live," Robert shouted. "We signed a lease to leave this apartment next month. We already paid a deposit. We bought furniture. We had plans. And you are destroying them because of a tantrum." "A tantrum?" He called my dignity a tantrum. "It's not a tantrum, Robert," I shouted back from inside. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. It's a consequence, something you never learned because I always rescued you from everything. Then rescue me now one last time. I swear we will change. We will include you in everything. We will value you. But you need to do this for me one last time. How many last times have I heard that phrase in my life, Robert? How many times did I give you one more chance? How many times did I forgive things I shouldn't have forgiven and it always ended up in the same place? Invisible, used, despised. "Elena, I apologize," Diana shouted. "What I said to you that night was awful. I admit it. I was angry about other things and I took it out on you, but I didn't mean it. I didn't want to hurt you." "Lie!" I yelled with all the strength I had. "Of course you meant it. You had been treating me like trash for 3 years. That night, you just said out loud what you always thought. And the worst part is that Robert let you. He let you humiliate me. He chose your side again and again. I heard sobs on the other side. Diana was crying. Robert was crying. But I no longer felt compassion. Those tears came too late. After years of contempt, after months of being treated like a nuisance, after using my name to put themselves in debt without my real knowledge, after emptying the account where I deposited my money with so much effort. "Mom," Robert's voice was now barely a broken whisper. "If you do this, if you let the bank take the condo, I'm going to be left with a destroyed credit history. I won't be able to rent anything decent. I won't be able to buy another property for years, maybe decades. My professional life is going to suffer. Everything I built is going to collapse. Welcome to consequences," I said in a cold voice. I built my life brick by brick, working double shifts, cleaning, sewing, sacrificing myself. And I built it to give you a future. But you chose to destroy my present. So now you are going to learn what I always knew. That nothing is free in this life, that actions have a price, and that when you betray the person who gave you everything, you end up losing everything. "You can't be so cruel," Diana sobbed. "We're family." "Family?" I let that word float in the air for a moment. "Family doesn't use you. Family doesn't humiliate you. Family doesn't make you feel like you are in the way. You decided I wasn't family a long time ago. I am just accepting your decision. Please. Robert was hitting the door in desperation. I will pay you every penny. I will get a second job, whatever it takes, but don't do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you that you didn't do to yourself. You used my name. You signed contracts without explaining them to me. You emptied my account. You excluded me from your life. And when I finally reacted, when I finally said enough, what did you do? You sued me. Your own mother. So don't come now asking for mercy when you didn't have any for me. There was a long, heavy silence on the other side of the door. I only heard ragged breaths and choked sobs. Then Robert spoke again, but this time his voice was different. He was no longer pleading. There was something dark in his tone. Fine, he said slowly. If that's what you want, if you want to destroy me, if you want me to lose everything, go ahead. But I want you to know something, Mom. This doesn't end here. I'm going to remember this for the rest of my life. I'm going to remember that when I needed you most, you turned your back on me, that you chose revenge over your own son. And when you are truly old, when you are sick, when you need help, I'm going to remember this day. And I'm going to give you exactly what you are giving me now. Nothing. Those words in which pierced me like knives, because they were the final confirmation of what I always suspected to him. I only had value as long as I was useful, and now that I no longer served his purposes, he was threatening me with abandonment, as if he hadn't spent the last 3 years emotionally abandoning me, as if his future absence were a worse punishment than his present contempt. Robert, I said in a trembling but firm voice, I'm already old. I'm already alone. I already know what it's like for you to abandon me. I've been living that abandonment for 3 years. So your threat doesn't scare me. I lost my son a long time ago. I just took a long time to realize it. I heard footsteps walking away, the sound of the elevator, the doors closing. Silence. I let myself fall to the floor with my back against the door. The tears finally came, not from sadness, but from liberation. It was over. Everything was over. There were no more pleas. There was no more manipulation. There were no more false hopes of reconciliation. I stayed there sitting on the floor of my living room for I don't know how long, crying silently, letting out years of accumulated pain, years of feeling small, years of begging for love, years of being invisible. When I finally got up, I walked to the balcony. The sun was rising, a new day was beginning, and for the first time in years, that new day was mine alone. I picked up my phone and wrote a message to Charles. Let the bank proceed. No more negotiations. It's over. His reply came 5 minutes later. Understood. Tomorrow, at the time of 9 o'clock in the morning, the foreclosure will be formally executed. The condo returns to the bank. Your name is cleared of all responsibility. You did it, Alilanina. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. I had done it. I had gotten my life back. I had recovered my dignity. And although it hurt, although the price had been losing my son forever, at least now I could look myself in the mirror without feeling ashamed. Day 30 dawned gray. Heavy clouds covered the sky, as if the city itself knew something important was about to end. I woke up early at the time of 6 o'clock in the morning, although I had barely slept 3 hours. I made coffee and sat on the balcony wrapped in a beige blanket. The air was cold. November always brought that chill that gets into your bones and won't let go. At the time of 9 o'clock on the dot, just as Charles had said, I received the official notification from the bank. A formal email with legal language that basically said, the property located at 5th Avenue, number 243, apartment 502, has been foreclosed due to lack of payment. The occupants have 72 hours to voluntarily vacate or forced eviction will be proceeded with. Attached was a PDF document with official seals and digital signatures. I read it 3 times, every word, every clause, and when I finished, I closed the email and stared at the blank screen of my phone. It was done. After 30 days of silent war, after tears and pleas, after being called cruel and vindictive, it was done. Robert and Diana had lost the condo. I didn't feel joy nor sadness, only a strange emptiness. Like when you finish reading a very long book and you don't know what to do with the time you used to dedicate to reading it. I got dressed calmly, black pants, gray sweater, comfortable shoes. I tied my hair in a low bun. I looked in the mirror. The wrinkles around my eyes seemed deeper. The fatigue of the last few weeks was evident on my face, but there was also something different. My eyes no longer had that permanent look of pleading. There was no longer that constant anxiety of waiting for someone to validate me. There was something firmer there, something that resembled peace. I decided to go out. I couldn't stay locked up in the apartment all day thinking about what had just happened. I drove aimlessly for a while until, without realizing it, I ended up in the same place as always, in front of my mother's house on the outskirts of the city. This time, I got out of the car. I walked through the front garden, feeling the mint plants crunch under my shoes. The fresh green scent filled my lungs. I went up the 3 steps of the wooden porch that creaked under my weight. I sat in the old rocking chair that my mother had bought at a flea market decades ago. From there I could see the quiet street, the trees moving in the wind. An elderly lady walking her dog, a child on a bicycle. The simple, slow life of a neighborhood where nothing urgent ever happened. And I wondered why I had spent the last few years living downtown in that small, noisy apartment when I could have been here in this place that smelled of my childhood, of my mother, of more honest times. I took out my phone and called Carol, the tenant. "Mrs. Alelinena, how are you?" "Good." "Carol, look. I've been thinking about what we talked about the other day about selling the house. Have you made a decision?" "Yes, I'm not going to sell you the house." I heard a disappointed sigh on the other end, but I continued. "But I'm going to give you 3 months' notice to find another place. I'm going to move in here. I need this space. I need this place." There was a pause. "I understand. 3 months is enough time. Thank you for letting us know in advance. You've been a good landlady all these years." I hung up and kept looking at the house. My house? The place where I was going to start over? At 65 years old, I was going back to the beginning. But this time, not as a scared little girl, but as a woman who finally knew her worth. The phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. I opened it cautiously. "I hope you're happy. We're left with nothing. No condo, no credit, no future, all because of your selfishness. But don't worry, someday you're going to need something from us. And that day, you're going to remember what you did." It was from Diana. I recognized her writing style full of drama and victimhood. I didn't respond. I simply blocked the number. I no longer had the energy for her manipulations. 5 minutes later, another message arrived. Another unknown number. This time it was longer. "Mom, today we were handed the official notification. We have 3 days to get our things out of the condo. 3 days to dismantle the life we built, the furniture we bought. The plans we had, all destroyed. And the worst part is that you don't even feel remorse. You think this is justice, but it's just cruelty. You're a bitter woman who couldn't stand to see her son happy, who couldn't stand that I chose my wife over you, because that's what really bothers you, right? That you are no longer the center of my world, that you can no longer control me. Well, congratulations. You got your revenge, but you lost your son forever. I hope it's worth sleeping alone for the rest of your life, knowing that you were the one who destroyed this family." I read the entire message without emotion. Every word was designed to hurt me, to make me feel guilty, to manipulate me one last time. But it no longer worked because I knew the truth. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped holding up something that was already broken. I wrote a response. The first and last one I was going to give them. "Robert, I didn't destroy your life. I just stopped funding it. I didn't ruin your future. I just protected mine. I didn't abandon you. You abandoned me years ago when you chose contempt over respect, when you chose convenience over honesty, when you chose to use my name without my real knowledge. I gave you 30 years of my life. I gave you everything I had, and you paid me back with humiliation. So no, I don't regret it. I don't feel guilty. I only feel relief that I can finally live without carrying people who don't value me. I wish you the best. Seriously, I hope you learn from this. I hope you grow. I hope someday you understand that love is not about using people until they are no longer useful. But that is no longer my problem. Take care. I sent the message and blocked that number too. I turned off the phone completely. I no longer wanted to know more. I no longer needed to know more. I stayed sitting on that porch for hours, watching the sun move across the sky, watching the shadows change places, watching life continue with or without drama, with or without Robert, with or without the pain of the last few weeks. When it started to get dark, I went inside the house. Carol had left everything immaculate. The floors shone, the windows were clean, it smelled clean and of lavender. I walked through the rooms empty of furniture but full of memories. The room where I slept as a child. The kitchen where my mother prepared coffee every morning. The living room where we sat to watch television on that old appliance that took 5 minutes to turn on. And I realized something important. This house never felt empty, even if no one was here, because it was full of true love. The love of a woman who worked until her hands were destroyed so that her daughter would have opportunities. The love that asks nothing in return. The love that does not manipulate or control or humiliate. That was the kind of love I had given Robert. And that was the kind of love he had despised. But that no longer defined me because I was more than just Robert's mother. I was Elelenina, daughter of Martha, a 65-year-old woman who had survived loss and betrayal and years of feeling invisible and who had finally found the strength to say no more. I left the house and locked the door. I went back to my car. I drove back to my apartment with the windows open, letting the cold wind hit my face. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt light, as if I had released a weight that I had been carrying on my shoulders for so long that I no longer even remembered how it felt to walk without it. That night, when I got home, I prepared a simple dinner. Pasta with tomato sauce, toast, a glass of red wine. I sat at my small dining table and ate slowly, savoring every bite, without rushing, without anxiety, without being dependent on the phone, waiting for someone to need me. And when I finished, I washed the dishes, turned off the lights, put on my pajamas, and got into bed. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in 30 days, I slept deeply, without nightmares, without guilt, without fear. Just the peaceful sleep of someone who had finally chosen her own peace over the comfort of others. 3 months later, everything had changed. It was February, and the heat was beginning to arrive with that intensity that makes you seek shade at any time of day. I was now completely settled in my mother's house. I had sold most of the furniture from my previous apartment and bought new things for this place. Things that I chose, things that I liked. An olive green sofa, white linen curtains, an old wooden table that I found at an antique market and restored with my own hands. The front garden was now better cared for. I pruned the mint plants every week. I planted soft pink roses in the corners. I painted the porch white and replaced the old rocking chair with a new one, but in the same style. This place had become my sanctuary, my refuge, my true home. I had established a simple and comforting routine. I woke up with the sun. I made coffee in the Italian coffee maker that had belonged to my mother. I went out to the porch to read while drinking my first cup of the day. Then I would walk through the neighborhood for an hour. I greeted the neighbors who already knew me, the lady with the dog, the man who sold homemade bread from his house, the children going to school. In the afternoons, I sometimes cooked. Recipes I had forgotten, recipes my mother taught me as a child. Chicken pot pie, apple crumble. I cooked not because someone asked me to, but because it gave me pleasure. Because the smell of food filled the house and made me feel alive. In the evening, I read or watched old movies. Sometimes I called a distant cousin with whom I had reconnected after years. We talked about life, about memories, about nothing important, and that was enough. I hadn't heard anything directly from Robert, but once walking downtown when I went to run errands at the bank, I saw him from afar. He was leaving an office building. He looked thinner, more tired. The suit he was wearing was the same one I knew from 2 years ago. He no longer had that air of confidence that always characterized him. He walked with his shoulders slumped, looking at his phone, completely absorbed in his own world. I hid behind a pole. not because I was afraid, but because I didn't want the drama. I didn't want the confrontation. I didn't want to break the peace that had cost me so much to build. I saw him get on a public bus. He who always boasted about his latest model car, the car he probably had to sell to pay off debts. I felt something. It wasn't exactly satisfaction, nor was it sadness. It was something more like acceptance. He was living the consequences of his decisions, and I was living the peace of mind. One afternoon in March, I received a call from Charles. "Mrs. Elelena, how are you? It's been a while since we spoke." "Very well, Charles. Settled in my new house. Peaceful. And you? How are things going?" "Good. I'm calling because the entire legal matter is finally closed. The lawsuit your son filed was completely dismissed. The judge ruled in your favor on all counts. Your name is completely clean. There is no debt associated with you. You are officially free." Officially free. Those words sounded like music. Thank you, Charles, for everything, for guiding me through this, for not judging me. There's nothing to thank me for. You did the right thing, and I hope you can now enjoy your life without that weight on your shoulders. I hung up and stared at the garden through the living room window. Free. After years of carrying responsibilities that were not mine, after years of feeling tied to people who emotionally drained me, I was finally free. That same week, something unexpected happened. I was watering the garden plants when I saw a car pull up in front of my house. It was a modest white car. Gladys, Diana's mother, got out of it. She was carrying a bouquet of yellow flowers in her hands. I tensed up immediately. I didn't know what to expect, but she walked towards me with slow, almost timid steps. "Elelena," she said softly. "Excuse me for coming unannounced. I know you might not want to see me, but I needed to do this." "What is it?" I asked without hostility, but also without warmth. "To bring you this." She held out the flowers. "And to tell you that you were right in everything. My daughter and your son are now living in a small apartment in an affordable area. Robert had to get a second job. Diana had to go back to work. They are struggling. They are paying the consequences. And you know what the saddest thing is? That they are finally learning." "Learning what?" "That life owes them nothing. That they cannot use people. That respect is earned, not demanded." Diana called me crying last week. She told me that now she understands everything you did for Robert because she is working 10 hours a day and she barely has enough to cover expenses, and she is only now realizing what it means to sacrifice yourself for someone. "I'm glad they're learning," I said sincerely. "Really, I don't wish them ill. I just wanted them to understand." They understood. Too late, perhaps, but they understood. Gladys looked me directly in the eyes. "Do you think you can ever forgive them?" I thought about it for a long moment. "I don't know. Maybe, but not now. I need to heal now. I need to live for myself. For the first time in decades, I need to think about Elelena before thinking about everyone else." She nodded with understanding. "That's fair. Very fair. I just wanted you to know that if someday in the future you decide to give them another chance, I think they will value it now. But if you don't, I understand that too. No one has the right to ask you for more than you've already given." She said goodbye with a brief hug and left. I stayed there, standing with the bouquet of flowers in my hands. I put them in a vase with water and placed them on the dining table. They were pretty simple, like this new life I was building. The following weeks were peaceful. I started taking pottery classes at a community center near home. I met other women my age, some widows like me, others divorced, others simply alone. But all with stories, all with scars, all learning to live again. One afternoon, while shaping a clay cup on the wheel, one of them asked me, "Elelena, do you have children?" The question caught me by surprise. Before I would have automatically replied, "Yes, a son." But this time I thought better of it. "I had a son," I said slowly. "But we no longer have a relationship. It was painful but necessary." She nodded without judgment. Sometimes biological family is not real family. Sometimes real family is the one we choose, the one that respects us, the one that values us. She was right. And I was beginning to build that chosen family with these women from the workshop, with my neighbors, with my cousin, with the people who treated me with dignity. One evening in April, almost 6 months after everything that had happened, I was sitting on the porch watching the stars when a deep peace completely flooded me. It wasn't euphoric happiness, it was something better. It was contentment. It was the feeling of being exactly where I should be, of having made the right decisions even if they were the hardest ones. I thought of my mother, Martha, how proud she would have been to see me now, how she would have applauded my bravery, how she would have said, "That's how you do it, daughter. That's how you defend your dignity." And I thought of all the women who are going through the same thing I went through, the ones who are being used, the ones who are being despised, the ones who are begging for love from people who don't value them. And I wanted to tell them something. I wanted them to know that there is a way out, that there is life after the pain, that it is never too late to choose yourself. Because if anyone out there is experiencing something similar to what I lived, if someone feels invisible in their own family, if someone is carrying people who only look for them when they need them, I want you to know this. You are not selfish for setting boundaries. You are not cruel for protecting your peace. You are not a bad person for saying enough is enough. You deserve respect. You deserve true love. You deserve to be valued. And if you have to distance yourself from your own blood to find your peace of mind, it's okay. It's more than okay. Because at the end of the day, the person you have to live with every day of your life is yourself. And you deserve to be able to look in the mirror without shame. I lost my son. That is true. But I found myself. And it turned out that was worth much more than I ever imagined.